What's up, everyone? It's Ruby here, bringing you guys another video. Today, we're going to talk about James Gunn and the fact that he tweeted out this tweet right here. And some people think that it is a hint of what is to come in the future. Except, it kind of is not. So as much as you would love to think that this is the plan for Chapter 1 for the DCU, it is not. And what the heck? Okay. It is not. It's actually this comic book cover right here. So these two are the same thing. It's exactly what he tweeted. So this is the Mr. Terrific's, well, it's the Terrific's number 25 issue. So this was created by Mora, and you can see right here the artist who actually made this. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't hint at anything. I think what it hints at is, number one, there is a confirmed Mr. Terrific's project being created. So we are definitely going to see Mr. Terrific in the DCU at some time, not necessarily in Chapter 1, but it's gonna happen at some point. So that is definitely a great sign, because for me, Mr. Terrific's is a really good character, and he basically could potentially be the start of the new JSA forming, because he's in charge of two organizations. He's in charge of JSA and Checkmate. Checkmate probably won't happen till much further down the line. It just wouldn't really make sense for it to start off with Checkmate, although maybe, who knows. So it's probably going to be JSA related. So with that being said, though, there could be hints as to other characters we might see in the DCU. Especially since we know that this is, like, James likes to take from different comics, and he is very invested in adapting these. So we also, the reason why people think that this is like a hint as to what is to come to the future is that there's a very similar people that James has talked about that are in this little picture. So of course there's the Trinity right here. So you notice there's Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. There's also Plastic Man. So this is Plastic Man right here. Swamp Thing is right here. Swamp Thing has a project coming down later, assuming that ends up being a thing. There's Robin. Technically that's Tim Drake, but it could also represent Damian Wayne at the same time. That's definitely Tim Drake. There's the Joker. Oh, is that no, Damian has a different outfit, I think. Well, Damian also has a sword, but that's another issue. I mean, it could be Damian. I don't know. I think it's Tim, though. I could be wrong. I'm not too familiar with the Terrific's comic book that he used. I actually never read it, so I don't know when this took place. And then there's also the Joker. Of course, he's going to be in the DCU probably at some point. Dr. Light, which is an interesting choice to include. Obviously, this is in the context of the comic. We also have up here, we also know that there's going to be Supergirl, of course. Not exactly this Supergirl, but this, she's still included. I forget this guy's name. I know I've seen him before. I don't know his name. We have Batgirl over here. Classic black and gold, which I like to see. I mean, not necessarily a fan of the newer suit. I think the black and gold is much more classy, much more elegant, but I could be in the minority for that. Catwoman, of course, going for the classic suit. Shazam, or Captain Marvel, as we like to say. This Blue Beetle in the back. So again, more projects that kind of like are in line with what James Gunn is kind of actually working on. We have a Blue Beetle movie coming soon. We already had Shazam. Probably going to get retconned, but We have Firestorm over here. We have John Kent over here. Superman's son. You have Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. Again, other things that James was kind of like talking about as potential people to see later. We also have, of course, Black Canary up here, Green Arrow down here, Aquaman. Now this is much different from the Jason Momoa Aquaman, so it'll be interesting to see if maybe Jason Momoa does end up getting recasted. I think he will be. I think everyone is probably going to get recasted. At least, I think every one of the major characters is going to get recasted, because it just makes sense. It just makes sense to just start over with a fresh take on the DCU, rather than trying to salvage anyone. I think it's probably the better call. I think the only one you keep really is Amanda Waller, because, I mean, you can't really replace Viola Davis. I mean, you can, but I think that Viola Davis is a fine cast, and I think that you could use that as an argument to, like, needing to, like, kind of see where everyone is at once Flashpoint takes into effect. Now, some people are questioning why Aquaman 2 and Blue Beetle would come after Flashpoint, but the thing is, in the comics themselves, Flashpoint didn't actually have an immediate effect on every one of the comics that were releasing. It actually took a couple of years before Flashpoint even was really in effect, so I think you could actually argue that this is more accurate to the comics by not doing the reset right away, especially for the more recent projects. Number one, because obviously some of them are already done, and there's no reason to, like, redo them. So you could still, like, have those projects exist, and you could even tie them in later, maybe with an end credit scene, or just tying them in later and kind of having those events of Flashpoint kind of reflecting in the new DCU, or you just kind of ignore it and just move on. So again, there's Wonder Woman, of course, Plastic Man right here, Raven right here, Deathstroke included, Harley Quinn, Wally West, Barry Allen, I think. Metamorphosis, Hawkgirl. So a lot of these heroes, the reason why people think that this means something is that a lot of these heroes are very much under James Gunn's kind of like radar, especially with the projects coming up, the Gods and Monsters. You know, there's a lot of hints towards like these types of characters. And it would make sense. I think for chapter 1, it's a little bit ambitious because there are a lot of characters that people aren't as familiar with, but maybe that's a good thing. Also, if you really think about it, okay, this is not James Gunn chapter 1 because, number 1, there's a lot of people missing. There's no Booster Gold, there's no Authority, there's no Creature Commandos, so of course, no, this is not representing what chapter 1 is. This is simply probably hinting towards what could be or what could be coming, but I wouldn't guarantee that every single thing that you see here is going to be in chapter 1. Maybe chapter 2, that's a different issue, but it'll be interesting to see where they go. Now, it has kind of been hinted that the first Justice League movie is actually going to be based on the New Frontier, which we will also talk about in a moment. So, Justice League, the New Frontier, is actually a really good movie. I highly recommend it. But it's this movie right here. Sorry. This... Where is it? Where's a good image? A lot of these are kind of bad images. Anyways, let me do this.
I'll just bring up the wiki page. So this is the New Frontier. This is Justice League: The New Frontier. It is based on a comic book, but this is basically going back to the classics, to the classic superheroes, back in the kind of like 90s, well, not even 90s, 40s styles. And so this is what the New Frontier is. This is what the New Frontier is. And if it ends up leading in this direction, there could be some very interesting things that are done in the movie, especially leading up to this movie. So if this is true, then the main villain is going to be the Center. The Center, and as you can see, this is kind of, I'll read you guys the plot. Here's the plot that is going to be based on, if this is true. An unknown entity named the Center tells its story about how it was born from the Earth itself, and has witnessed the evolution of dinosaurs, the meteor shower, and mankind's evolution. Due to man's capacity for war and violence, the Center has concluded that they must be eradicated. At the end of the Korean War, United States Air Force pilot Hal Jordan and his wingman Kyle Ace Morgan are attacked by enemy pilots but survive. In Gotham, John Jones, the last survivor of the Green Martian race, is teleported to Earth. Unable to return, Jean disguises himself. In Las Vegas, Iris West is on the telephone with her fiancé, Barry Allen, also known as the Flash, at a casino when Captain Cold arrives to commit robbery. He races from Central City to confront Cold. Flash finds the 5 bombs hidden by Cold and captures him before Cold is possessed by an entity. There's a lot of details of what the movie actually is about. It does make sense if this is chapter 1, this is following Flashpoint, and this is the restart of everything. So we're doing the Justice League from the start to finish. We have nothing to base off of. And so I think actually this story is actually kind of a good idea to start with, because this actually ends up leading into what later becomes the Tomorrowverse, at least in the DCAU. I don't think that's going to happen in this timeline, because I mean I feel like getting into it would be interesting to see if they go that way. It'd definitely be interesting. Well, let me see. I have to remind myself. I could be actually wrong. I think I might actually be wrong in terms of the order. I think this actually leads into... Alright, then Justice League New Frontier is actually separate from the DCAU movies. But it could be interesting to lead into maybe a chapter 2, which could involve a little bit more of like the DCAU movies that we see. We know that we're starting basically with like the Son of Batman, so I wouldn't be surprised if we end up following a similar direction to the DCAU movies. I don't think we're gonna go like word for word. I think it's gonna probably evolve as we go into further, and hopefully it does, because I think there's a lot of unexplored stories in the DCAU that could really work in the DC live action, or even be moved into an animated series. I know Wonder Woman there's rumors of Wonder Woman getting her own animated series. If James can make that happen, very exciting, very, very amazing. I hope that ends up coming true. And there's a lot coming to the DCU, and I just wanted to take this time to kind of share a little bit of my thoughts on on kind of like the Justice League in general and the DCU list that I think that would be like, this is like the best. I think this is the best because this kind of actually introduces multiple teams. So this is kind of like what I was thinking. It's kind of doing a brainstorm. This is a new list, by the way. I have done a list previously, but this is a new list based on kind of the new information that we're getting. So the big debate right now is who is in the Justice League. Who is in the Justice League? And this is my answer. I think this is the one that makes the most sense. So obviously you have the Trinity. The Trinity is in the league. Then you have Green Lantern. Now there's a debate of whether it should be Hal or John. I think you can do it to where there's both. I think you do both. Because I think the reason you do both is because some of them, they could basically do alternates, right? Hal could go into space, deal with the space matter, and so John takes over on Earth. John could go into space, and then Hal takes over, and so you could basically change them out and have them both be a part of the Justice League. You wouldn't have the overcrowding, you would still have kind of the 6 or 7, and it would actually work. And then for the Flash, you have Barry Allen. I think Barry Allen would just make the most sense in terms of which one you include. I know there's a big debate about Wally versus there's always the big debate about Wally versus Barry. And I definitely think you go Barry in this instance because I think it's just going to flow a lot better, and ultimately it's going to make the teams make a little bit more sense. Then, of course, you have Martian Manhunter. I don't think you can have the Justice League without Martian Manhunter. I really don't. I think you absolutely have to include Martian Manhunter. He's a very valuable member of the team, and I think it would be sad not to see him in the league. Aquaman is also kind of one where you don't actually always have to have him around because he does have duties to Atlantis, and you can have him be in Atlantis and kind of have him be maybe like more like a part-time member of the league, so you can still have that balance of like 7 or 8, and not have it be like super powered all the time, and you can still have Aquaman being the king of Atlantis, and you have, you know, John's or a Green Lantern kind of going out into space, and so it makes a lot more sense to just have it be like this rather than trying to like figure out, okay, which Green Lantern do we have, I think later down the line there's the potential to adding new members, and I think one of those members I think those members should be kind of like Green Arrow, the Atom, Vixen, Big Barda. Like I think not only do they create a diverse lineup, but it also kind of gives an interesting take on what the league is supposed to be. Because the league is not the only team that is going to exist either. There's also the JSA. Now, what's interesting is that the JSA can actually consist of kind of both league and, like, it can kind of be both. Because you notice I put Vixen twice. And yes, I did put Vixen twice. Because I think Vixen could go for either team. Because Vixen is a very powerful superhero and so could very well be in the league, but also could be argued better for the JSA. I think the main ones that you should definitely include, Alan Scott. I think Alan Scott has to be included in the JSA at some point, whether you start with him or have him later. I think it would be a mistake not to include him because Alan Scott is a really great character that often gets overlooked as a Green Lantern option, and I think in many ways Alan Scott is kind of important because he's well, first of all, he's the first Green Lantern. Just in the comics. In the comics, he's like the first Green Lantern. He starts everything. I mean, Hal Jordan comes in later. He's a lot more popular, but Alan is like the one that like the classic. So I definitely think that, I mean, I think it makes more sense to have, Hal or John on the League, while Alan Scott is in the JSA. I mean, that's the way it is in the comics, and that's the way it should be. Also, Hawkgirl, I debated about whether or not she should be in the League or the JSA. I think you can do either one. I think story-wise, it would make more sense if she's in the JSA, because she can then interact with Hawkman, and their stories are very much intertwined. So if you're going for the classic Hawkgirl, the classic from the comic books, I think the JSA makes a little bit more sense than the League. And I think it would actually probably balance out the teams anyways, because I think you have Hawkgirl. The problem is that the Justice League is very overpowered, right? There's a lot of very powerful heroes. There's a lot of instances where you have to depower the League in order to tell the stories that need to be told. So I think in a way to balance that out is to have like some of the superpowered like people who would normally be on the League actually be in the JSA. And then you also have like Atom Smasher, of course, and Dr. Fate and Mr. Terrific. Now Dr. Fate could technically be temporary because it's another team that I think he would work very well with, and I think it most likely, well, if they end up going in the direction that I think they're gonna go, then he would have to kind of like move teams at some point. The others that I think should be included: Vixen, Black Lightning, Wildcat, Animal Man, like just have Booster Gold, Plastic Man. I think overall the JSA should be a bigger team than the Justice League, because I think the Justice League should be saved for like the elite heroes of the universe. Like these are like the best of the best of the best. The JSA can be a lot bigger because their heroes kind of have like various responsibilities, and they're not always the same amount of like balanced power. I absolutely think that Mr. Terrific should be a part of the JSA, at least starting out, before Checkmate is made. I don't even think Checkmate should really be existing right now, but we can get into that later when we're closer to getting actual Checkmate. And then another team that should definitely exist is the Titans. The Teen Titans, whatever you want to call them. They don't necessarily have to be teens anymore. I think at this point you kind of have them be more like 20 to 25. I think that would actually make more sense. So in a way they would be more like the young adults than the Teen Titans, but you could just call them the Titans. You just call them the Titans and I think it would work. And then this is where you would have Nightwing, Damian Wayne, Starfire, Raven, Beast Boy, Blue Beetle, and yes, of course, Cyborg. Cyborg should be in the Teen Titans. He should not be in the League. And he doesn't, again, it doesn't have to be the Teen Titans. It can be just the Titans. But I think his dynamics between these members are a lot better than the Justice League. In the Justice League, he seems like out of place. He doesn't really make sense in League, and he never really has. Because he has a lot more of a familial relationship and a friendly relationship with like Beast Boy and Blue Beetle, and I think it would actually be much more beneficial to have him be a part of the Teen Titans and the Titans than just to have him in the League as a I don't know. He's like a bench warmer on the League, but I think in the Titans he's like more of a leader. Then you would have the team, or Young Justice, or whatever you end up calling them. This would be kind of the team of the sidekicks. This is where you have Supergirl, you have Miss Martian, you have Aqualad, you have Kid Flash, you have Robin, and you have Wonder Girl, preferably Donna. So Robin, meaning Tim Drake. He wouldn't necessarily be Robin in this case. He would probably be more like Red Robin or Drake or whatever. I think it should just be Tim Drake. I think you can still have the team, and you would have Tim Drake. You would have the sidekicks, and later you would have Superboy and Static Shock. Once they're introduced, you would just integrate them into the team. So I think having multiple, because you have multiple adult teams, right? Adult teams. You have Justice League and just JSA, and then you could have Teen Titans or Titans and Young Justice. I think, honestly, calling the team is kind of weird because it's very generic, but it's also kind of funny.
So I think you honestly just call them Young Justice. It would make sense, or Justice Juniors, Justice babies. But no, I think you definitely could do Young Justice in the DC universe and have them integrate well, and I think people would appreciate it as well. And it would be definitely an interesting dynamic to include, and I think it would be something to definitely look into. And then you would have, also the reason why I mentioned Justice League, Young Justice, I mean, is because James Gunn has actually mentioned that he likes Young Justice, and he likes the animated universe, so it makes sense of Young Justice actually incorporated into the movies as well. And then you would have Justice League Dark. Justice League Dark would consist of basically everyone that is magical. So you would have Constantine, you would have Zatanna, you have Deadman, you have Swamp Thing, and later you would add even more characters like Etrigan and Detective Chimp and Witch Boy. And the question is whether or not Dr. Fate joined Justice League Dark. Dr. Fate has been in Justice League Dark. It's not necessary. You could argue that he would be more fitting in Justice League Dark, especially just the way that he works. But yeah, I mean, I think it depends. It really depends on a lot of things. And that would be very interesting. So that's kind of like my wish list, right? And of course, there's also kind of something that I left off of the list, but I definitely think should eventually be developed, and maybe sooner rather than later. But let me just show you guys. Let's do it this way. So I think the other thing that you also include is, of course, Birds of Prey. And I really hope that the way that you do it is that you have a Batgirl arc, right? And eventually it leads into Killing Joke, which ends up becoming Oracle. And then after you have Oracle, that's when you really form the Birds of Prey. You could have Black Canary. That's why I didn't include Black Canary on the Justice League list, even though I think she should be in the Justice League. I think she would work better as the Birds of Prey, and I think the Birds of Prey should be separate from the League. You would have Dove, and you would have Hawk and Dove. You would have Huntress. You could also have Batgirl later on, which would eventually be like Cassandra Cain and so basically Orphan, and also eventually have Spoiler, which is Stephanie Brown. And so you kind of be able to use these stories to create these dynamics of the different teams. And I think having the different teams is actually a really good thing, because you don't have to worry about, oh, these are the characters that we have to use in this. You can have like multiple teams, and I think having a team dynamic and having be different is good, because that allows more characters to be added later on without the movie feeling overcrowded. I think sometimes you can have too many teams and it feels overcrowded because they're all included in the movies. But if you have the dedicated like team movies, like you have the Titans over here, the Justice League over here, it can help the movie be less crowded while still having them in universe. And I think that is the key. You can still write in reasons why that they're not included. For example, if there's like a big war, and maybe it's a Justice League war, maybe like the Titans are actually across the world dealing with another issue. And you could actually have them tie into each other and not have to interfere, and still not have the movies be like overcrowded. You could have a cinematic universe without the overcrowdedness, which often happens. And so those are kind of what I wanted to talk about in terms of the DCU. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Let me know if you guys want to talk more about the DCU. Comment down below and leave a like on this video. Hope to see you guys next time. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. And peace out, guys. It's been a blast. I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.